Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I am joined by the amazing Steve Guntley. Steve, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
No, this is such an honor. You guys seen a couple episodes ago, I had your partner Jared on.
Uh-huh.
We couldn't make it work that night. We had some scheduling conflicts, but we really wanted to make this happen. So I'm really honored to have you here to be able to learn how horror started for you. But before we do that, Steve, I would like for the people that don't know you to get to know you a little bit. Um, Steve is a writer, editor, actor, and podcaster based out of Austin, Texas, where he and his girlfriend Ailish, they live with their two dogs. Um, gotta give it up for the pups.
Gotta
Huge dog
always.
person myself. Um, so let's dig into this a little bit. How long have you
Yeah.
been writing, editing, acting for?
Oh God. Probably like act, acting and writing for pretty much my whole life. I've been doing the podcasting thing since I think 2016, around then. Yeah, I've been plugging away at that for quite a while. And loving that. And yeah, but I've been acting since I was in high school and writing ever since I was old enough to write. So yeah.
That's awesome, man. And you get all these feathers in your cap. And obviously you do the podcast Puppet Masters and Castle Freaks.
Yeah.
Jared talked a little bit about how you guys got connected, but when you guys decided to really make this your niche and make this the thing that you guys wanted to do, what gave you the push to be like, you know what, this is going to be something special. Let's just make it happen.
It was an idea that we'd been kicking around for a little bit. Like he probably told you, we connected through another podcast called Talking Terrific Television, where we were talking about The Sopranos. And he and I started messaging more and more, like off mic, to talk about horror movies. We would drop little horror references in various episodes of different podcasts we were appearing on. So we're like, okay, all right, this guy knows what Toxic Avenger is. I better talk to him a little bit more.
Right.
And then we kind of got to talking about it, and I forget how the conversation shifted to Full Moon Features. Eventually, it just kind of moved over in that direction, and we're both kind of like fascinated by this model of releasing horror. We remember had these memories of these being ubiquitous on video store shelves back when we were kids, and really like paying attention to that kind of stuff. And but we also realized we hadn't seen very many of these movies in actuality. And so we're like, all right, well, here's the kick we need. Like, let's put together this podcast, and then we'll watch every one of these movies, and we'll really kind of become experts on this particular weird little niche in cinema history. So yeah, we've been going for a couple of months now, and we've been getting great feedback, and having a lot of awesome guests on. It's been a blast, and we've been
Yeah.
watching some truly weird movies.
And that's the best way to go, man. When you
That's the
get into
best way
like
to go.
the full moon features, the trauma films, like those are the things that, I've always been a huge fan of independent film because it's not about the money at that point. It's about, really creating art and putting
Yeah,
something out there that is a really good passion project. And even it might be one of the lowest budget movies you've ever seen, but as long as the heart and soul are with it, that's really all that matters. Just entertain me. That's all I
absolutely.
really want.
Yeah, there's a scrappiness to these movies that I really appreciate, even when they're not like particularly good movies. Like we can say it, we can recognize that this is not a particularly great movie, but we try to come at it with a positive attitude every time, just because somebody is clearly pouring a lot of heart and soul into this goofy little project, and you have to kind of give it up that they got it made.
Yeah. And I really appreciate what you guys do because maybe you can introduce some people that have never heard of some of these films. Because obviously, when you hear Full Moon Features, your brain goes right to Puppet Master.
Sure,
That's
yeah.
that's the big thing. But with you guys, maybe if they check out Puppet Master and they start to do a little research, they find you guys, they can learn about some of the other Full Moon Feature films and their streaming service, which is fantastic. They have an amazing
Absolutely.
streaming service at Full Moon Features, and
Yeah.
you guys do a lot of great work for the company without even being paid by the company. So um,
We're waiting for
it's
Charlie Band to write that check any
Yep,
day now.
yep. Charlie, we
Yeah,
need you here, buddy.
yeah.
Um, and if you guys haven't already, you should because Jared's episode came out a couple days ago.
Mhm.
But make sure that you are subscribing to the podcast. I do have the links down in the description, as well as all of Steve's social media links. So you can also follow him to stay up to date on everything that he has coming up for us and more. Now, in order to do a podcast in the horror world at all,
Mhm.
horror had to start for you somewhere, Steve. So now I would like to
Yes,
go back to the past and
let's do
talk
it.
about what got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie, and Steve, the first horror movie you watched was.
Alien 3, David Fincher's Alien 3, which might even technically not be a horror movie. I think most people lump it into a sci-fi, but like the Alien series 1 and 3 in particular are pretty hardcore horror films, I would argue.
I think Aliens is a horror movie too. I think the first three Alien movies, I would go to bat for all three of those being horror movies. Like
Yeah,
it gets
yeah.
a little less horror as they go, but
Right, yeah, yeah.
it's just like the Terminator franchise. The first couple Terminator movies, I think, are complete horror movies, total
Oh,
horror flick.
absolutely.
And then it
Definitely.
goes more sci-fi action as it goes. And Alien 3 has definitely more of a sci-fi action feel. Fucking aliens, man. Like it's
They're
totally
pretty
a
horrifying.
horror flick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
So do you remember about how old you were the first time you had seen it?
Oh God, I probably would have been about 9 or 10 when I saw this. It was at a sleepover because I had fairly protective parents around this time that wouldn't allow me to watch any of these really violent R-rated movies that I was curious about. So I had to be at a sleepover that was lightly supervised with me and about half a dozen other kids around my age.
That's awesome. And so did everybody make it through the film?
Yeah, yeah, we all made it. I think I was the only one who was A, really paying attention to it, and B, visibly terrified of everything I was seeing. Like I had a really visceral reaction to that movie when I first saw it. Like it was a great experience, but I also remember being like scared out of my pants. I was really having a time. Everybody else was kind of just like chatting and shooting the shit and doing what 10-year-olds do, but I was wrapped up in that movie.
Right. And it's a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
I look at again. I hate to keep making this comparison, but I really do feel like the Alien franchise is a lot like the Terminator franchise in the direction
Yeah.
it went, the quality of film. I love the first three Terminator films. I know Terminator 3 gets shit on a lot.
No, Terminator
I
3 is
love the
solid.
first.
Yeah.
I know. I think that it went downhill after that, but I think the first three are great, man. I think
Yeah.
all three of them are good. And I think the same thing about Alien. Obviously you got Alien and Aliens, which are masterpieces in their own right, but everybody looks at Alien 3 as the one where there's a lot more action. There's a lot more
Yeah.
sci-fi, and it's like sit down and really pay attention to the movie. Watch it through the grand scope of a horror lens, and it
Yeah.
fits right in with the other two movies. It really, really does. It doesn't. I would say it lacks a lot of maybe like the slow burn anxiety feelings that you got from Alien and Aliens. But besides that, it's still creepy, still
Well,
scary, still
it's so grimy and it's so
yeah.
nihilistic, and that's some of the stuff that like really stuck with me. It's like this sense of existential horror more than necessarily like closet monster scares or anything like that. It's this overall sense of holy shit, the world is bleak and horrible. And I don't know, I think that was the sheer atmosphere of that movie really got under my skin the first time I saw it.
And I agree with you. And it's a film that is still very effective, especially if you're a 10-year-old watching it today. But do you remember which scene it was that affected you the most?
Well, okay, so I think the scene that really got to me was shortly after the alien hatched out of the Rottweiler, which I remember that scene upset me a lot too, but this one supplanted itself in my mind. There's a prisoner on this planet. So yeah, this is all in a prison planet for those who haven't seen it. Like everybody there is a convict, a violent convict, and they've all converted to this kind of like a religion where they, yeah, anyway, it's a whole deal. But one of the prisoners is working in this big industrial rusty pipe, and he's just like scraping scum off the inside of this exhaust vent. And he sees something out of the corner of his eye, reaches in, tries to grab it, and the alien, I was never quite clear if it just like jumped out and bit him, or if it startled him, or if it spit acid on him or something, but he took some damage, and then he falls down the exhaust pipe and falls into the big fan, and just like we just cut away to the walls and see this big splatter of gore and like this filmy kind of viscera that I think is supposed to be his skin. And I remember that scene really vividly. I'm just like, that is the most gory thing I've ever seen in my life at this age. And I'm just like, oh my God, that's so horrifying. That one really stuck in my head.
And I think that I've talked about this before, when you're watching An American Tale or The
Mhm.
Land Before Time,
Similar
and you
scenes
go
happen
from
in that
that,
movie. Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, you go from that to Alien 3, and you're
Yeah,
just like,
yeah.
it's a whole new world. Like we look back at it now, like we always knew, we didn't. The first time we started watching horror movies, like we were really rocked to our core because we had never seen anything like that before.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
was a
absolutely.
foreign thing to us. So that's what I love most about going back and revisiting it because, yeah, we look at it now and we're desensitized and, you know, I've seen the movie so many times that I can't remember what scene it was. But then you go to that first horror movie and you go back and you're sitting there and you smell the pizza rolls that you were making at that time, and you can hear mom on the phone, and all these things that are happening, and it really takes you back to being a 10-year-old and watching these films again. So
Yeah.
we know which scene it was that affected you the most, but what would you say your favorite scene from Alien 3 is?
Oh, I mean, look, the scene of Ripley first being confronted by the alien is iconic for a reason. It was used in all the ads. It's her pressed up against the wall and the alien coming just like right up cheek to cheek with her, like the little mouth coming out and like doing a little exploration thing. And then for some mysterious reason, which would probably be obvious to older viewers, but to me at 10, like I did not get what was going on. Uh, it does not attack her, like now this was my first Alien movie, so I didn't come to this with any of the baggage of like what an alien does, like how it implants inside you, what like I didn't know any of that. All I knew was that this thing is this voracious killer. It has every reason to take her out right now, and for some reason it did not. And that's almost scarier that it didn't do that than it
Mm-hmm.
did. I think that scene is pretty famous for a reason.
I think it's the most iconic scene from the film.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You
Easy
know,
answer, of course, but it is a pretty
well, I
amazing
mean,
scene for a reason.
we always talk about, oh, this is iconic. This is iconic. It's iconic for a reason.
Yeah.
It's iconic because it's amazing. That's
Yeah.
why it is the way it is. And I agree with you. I think it works out perfectly. And that's a moment. A lot of people think of that before they think of anything from Alien or Aliens. Obviously, you got
Yeah.
the chest burster from Alien. You got Get Away from Her, You Bitch from
Yeah.
Aliens, which I think are iconic. But that, up against the wall with that mouth right there and the drool coming out, like,
Those
that's a hard
are
one to beat, man.
those are the three iconic moments of the early part of the series, I would argue. Yeah, it's it's
Mhm.
it's those three. If you're lining them up, one, two, three, those are the ones.
I agree with you 100%. So we talk about, Alien 3, how that was your first horror movie. And,
Yeah.
right now in Hollywood, remakes, requels, sequels, it's kind of all the rage right now.
Sure.
I know they have a new Alien movie coming out. They have announced that they are in production on a new Alien film. But
Yeah.
would you like to see them like go back and try to do a remake of Alien 3? Would you like to try to see them tackle that type of prisoner planet story again?
I really loved the idea of the prisoner planet. I do hope what we're going back to is going to be more fundamental, like alien world building. I know a lot of people defend Prometheus and Alien Covenant, but those movies always just felt very shapeless to me. Like they felt like the beginnings of a good idea that never quite came together. And so I would like to see, I guess, honestly, just a little bit of less like philosophical fuckery and more just sort of straight down the barrel thrills. And I think
Mhm.
that is something that this movie accomplishes pretty well. Like I think this is a pretty lean and mean kind of movie. I don't know if I need to necessarily revisit. Was it Fury 461 or 641? I forget the actual numbers, but I don't know if I need to revisit that exact concept. But I do like the idea that all these different worlds in the alien universe are being colonized for some reason or another. I believe, if I remember correctly, the original pitch for the Alien 3 script was that it was going to be like a forest planet. And it was going to be like everything's made of wood. And then they reimagined it as more the industrial, like kind of gritty city. So, I mean, go to the forest planet, bring us to Kashyyyk, like let's see what happens like when you're kind of going against aliens in a natural environment rather than
Sure.
in a man-made industrial one. Yeah.
Well, and especially if you get something like that, if let's just say like an alien crash landed at a planet like that, how are they going to fix their ship? How are you going to get back home? No,
Yeah.
they're angry, pissed off, and ready to fight. So, um,
Right.
I
And
wouldn't mind seeing that either.
that's also the one carrot they've always kind of dangled at us and never really gone through with is aliens on Earth.
Right.
Like they never quite get there. Like even Alien Resurrection, I think they kind of nuke half the planet to prevent them from getting there, but they never quite landed there. And then I guess if you count Alien versus Predator, that's its own thing. But we never quite have that moment where they're running loose in the streets or something. And that might be too big of a card to cash in right now. That might be something they want to really build to and earn. But
Mhm.
it's I'm just saying it's a carrot that's been dangling. It's the big
Oh,
question. Yeah.
for a long, long time. So,
Yeah.
whenever we talk about a franchise film, I always like to ask the same question as well. Alien 3 was your first horror movie, obviously part of
Yeah.
a huge universe that is still ongoing. But at the time of filming, what would you say your favorite Alien film is?
Oh God, you know what? You ask me on a certain day, and it's going to be either one or two,
Mhm.
because I think they're both pretty perfect movies in their own way, and they're both accomplishing something pretty different. I think I might have to be old school and just say Alien One, the original Ridley Scott Alien, because that is so moody and so evocative and so original for the time. You know, it's been ripped off so many times that we kind of lose sight of how original and stark and spare that movie was. And Alien 2 is, or Aliens, is just bombastic and brilliant and fascinating and breathlessly exciting. But it's got kind of different aims than the original movie does, and nothing kind of for the sake of horror. I'm just going to say the first Alien movie.
Okay. And again, you can't go wrong with Alien or Aliens.
You really
You
can't.
know,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
like, do I want bacon or sausage as a side with my eggs? I'm going to be happy no
Exactly.
matter what, man.
Give me
It's going to
both.
taste good. For the
Yeah.
vegans out there, I'm sorry, I like bacon. But it's these movies. It's really hard to make that because they are, while it is Alien and Aliens, they are two completely different movies.
They are.
Going from Alien to Aliens, the scope gets bigger. Obviously, you go from one to zzz, and it's just the whole concept. I still think Alien has the best tagline of any movie ever. In space, no
Yeah.
one can hear you scream.
It's
Love
that's
it.
way up there. That's way up there.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
that's something I love about the Alien series in general is how willing they are to sort of reinvent the wheel every time. Like every sequel is really distinctive. Each one
Mhm.
almost in their own genre to a degree.
Yes.
While still just kind of playing with the same tropes. And I just like that they have this fresh approach to it. It keeps it from ever getting stale.
Hmm. And we talked about Alien, we talked about how the whole franchise really in general, but now I want to throw a little bit of a curveball at you here for a
Yeah.
second, Steve. My little buddy Ghostface is here now, and he has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Steve? Uh,
Oh, okay.
what is your favorite horror movie of all
Oh,
time?
that's again, that is such a hard question. That's choosing your children. But
But of course,
uh
it's this one.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the one. Yeah, I think John Carpenter's The Thing is a pretty perfect movie. I'm a big fan of Neil Marshall's The Descent from 2005, the original British cut. I think
Ooh.
is really a tremendously scary movie. I mean, you tossing out Ghostface. I love the original Scream. I love The People Under the Stairs. Lots of yeah, it's a huge list. It's a huge, huge list. But those are some of the ones that pop off the top of my head.
My wife's favorite film of all time is The People Under the Stairs.
Is it really?
Got a huge soft spot for that movie, man.
I've been.
Uh,
I'm gonna make my girlfriend watch that movie this October. Yeah, it's hard one to describe, but pretty
yeah,
amazing.
mommy and daddy are two of the greatest villains of all time.
It's so weird.
Like
Yes,
they're so out there, man. Like so terrifying. I love it to death. So,
absolutely.
and The Descent, man, what a film. Like that is
Yeah,
a film that has so many layers to uncover. Like the least scary thing in the movie are the monsters,
it's
man.
true. It's
Like
true.
your friends, like who you could trust, who you should love, the claustrophobia, just so many good things about that movie. And it's one of those movies that when it came out, I was like, this is a masterpiece.
Yeah,
I remember after I'd watched it, I was just like, I just watched a fucking masterpiece. Like that movie is
absolutely.
all female casts, essentially. You got a couple bit parts from men here and there, but
Yeah,
it's just one of those movies that was a way ahead of its time and
felt
still
like
holds
kind
up
of
so well today.
yeah, it felt like kind of a nice blending of sort of the early stages of when we're getting into prestige horror, but it's still not quite that. It still
Right.
has the kind of tawdry thrills of a horror movie of that era, but it is much smarter and more sensitive and more thoughtful than a lot of other films at that time.
Bingo.
Yeah.
So, man, I've had an amazing time hanging
Oh,
out with you, talking about your first horror movie, your favorite horror movie. But before I let you go, we always bounce back to the same question. We're going
yeah,
to go
yeah.
back to Alien 3.
Hmm.
And what we're going to do here is rank this movie on a skull count.
Okay.
Now, we're not ranking it on acting, production, score, direction, nothing like that. All we're doing, Steve, is ranking this movie on how much it affected you on your first viewing of the film. So, zero skulls being not effective, five being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Steve,
Okay.
what would your ranking of Alien 3 be?
I got to give this a solid four skulls. I think
Yeah.
this one it was just that good balance of scaring the shit out of me without giving me nightmares or
Hmm.
scaring me away from the genre entirely. It planted a very important seed for me, I think, and I became all about horror within the next couple of years, I would seek out the rest of the Alien. Well, it was only a trilogy at the time, but I would seek
Hmm.
out the rest of the trilogy and just fell in love with that whole series, and I'm still in love with it to this day. Can't wait for that next one.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, it was a really important movie for me. Even, it's a movie that is not without flaws. It's a movie that you can definitely criticize on some valid reasons. A lot of those issues are clean. Have you seen the assembly cut, like the longer
No.
recent? Yeah, the editor of that movie, they don't call it the director's cut because David Fincher wasn't involved with this, but the editor of the movie uh added, I think, like 30 minutes of footage and kind of re-edited some stuff that fills in a ton of plot holes and just makes
Oh.
the movie so much better. Like it's a damn great movie if you see the assembly cut. So definitely make a note of to check that one out, because even defenders of Alien 3 will like look at that first one. It's like, yeah, this is not a fully finished movie, but
I just wrote down assembly cut. That way I
perfect.
can try to order that tonight. I want to watch that.
Absolutely, definitely check it out. Yeah, absolutely. Four solid skulls, I think, for me.
And I think that's a fair ranking because if you hadn't watched this movie, maybe we wouldn't be sitting here talking today. Who knows how
Oh
different
yeah.
things would it be if your horror life didn't start with Alien 3. So I know I said it at the beginning, guys, but now we're at the end of the third act. The credits are about to roll and the curtain's about to drop. But before that happens, make sure, like I said, you're subscribing to the podcast. Make sure you're following Steve on all his social media accounts. I have those links down in the description. Steve, please don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you.
Great.
Uh, Everyone else, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It really does help the channel more than you know. And follow Sledgehammer Horror on social media. All our links are in the description as well. But until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.